number 26. I think that's the right number. One thing I want to show you in this packet, one of the things that a philosophy that I have for students is that you work on your fundamentals that are the basic principles of what the composers use to put the etudes together. This etude, while it has some significant technical issues, which we'll discuss, one of them is articulations. So what I usually have students do is extract the articulations out of the etude and apply them to everything else they do. So what I did was extracted the articulations. I went ahead and put them on just the E-flat major scale since we're in E-flat. However, I would recommend that you do it on all 12 scales, of 12 of your major scales. But you have tongue, this one where the groups are going from the 2nd 16th to the 1st. Also, this incorporates a technique that's called tongue release or tongue stop. I prefer tongue release because stop seems a little bit too permanent to me. But tongue release. Does everyone know what that is? It's where you spend most of your life going, directors telling you don't stop the sound with the tongue. Well, in certain circumstances, there are actually times that we do that. And I'll show you an example here. Is the time that you can do that. Also, just moving down the page with these articulations. Sorry. All the time through that, I'm doing just hopefully a fairly light tongue release on the last slur before the articulation. Now your question should be, why are you doing that? It's because you have an articulation following a staccato, which means what? What does staccato mean? Separated. Whoever said that's correct. It means detached, actually, not short. It means separated. And that really is important because if you listen to what I did on number 29, there were some staccatos, but I don't think they were short. They were separated, but not short. It depends on the tempo, the rhythm, the style, a lot of things that dictate how much separation, hence how short. But by doing the tongue release, it allows you, your tongue goes on the reed, that way it's already on the reed for the next articulation and puts a little bit of separation before a note's in a very fast tempo. Now, how artistically you do that is very important because you can give that note before the tongue goes to release it, you can give it a lot of length or how much value is up to you. Does that make sense? How many of you are already familiar with tongue release and you do it all the time anyway? Okay, good. If you don't already know that, strongly recommend that you do that. Go home and wrestle with this and go, what the heck was he talking about? Experiment, ask your teachers, ask your private teachers, and see what you can come up with. Okay, number 26. Coming through this, you will see in most cases your bis B flat is marked. I think I ended up marking a lot of them. Generally what happens is I'll make a marking and that marking holds until you see another one. In other words, if I do a marking on a B flat and then you have several other B flats with no marking, it's the same fingering that we had the first time until you see another one. Same thing until they're cleared. However, I think I went back and marked the majority of them for clarity. But if I missed one, just look to the previous marking and that's what is suggested. Okay? In the very beginning, for me, this is the technically most proficient fingering when it's standing by itself. I know that there's some people that will contest that, but as woodwind players, one of the most difficult things we do as woodwind players, this applies to all the woodwinds, not just saxophone, is we have to coordinate the left with the right hand. Okay, that's one thing. Two, a lot of times we are trying to simultaneously get a key that's open to close at the same time another one opens up. So if you combine all those issues, if you took an A flat and you go to B flat and it's side B flat, you're doing one of the hardest combinations on a woodwind instrument. You're combining the two hands, trying to coordinate the two hands, left and right, or right and left, however you want to look at it. One. Two, you're trying to simultaneously open and close keys and line them up so that nothing happens in between. And three, on those particular notes, the keys that I'm trying to coordinate doing this are controlled by the pinky of the left hand and the inside of my finger of the right. You add all of that together and it becomes extraordinarily difficult. Whereas if I use this, I take out the right hand, I take out any coordination of fingers, it's covered. Also, something that I want you to think about, whether you're an educator or a practitioner yourself, or a saxophonist, is that I teach this is not a fingering, but a hand position. Our hand position is normally up here. What I'll usually have my students do if we're going to do something in the key of E flat or F major scale is I say slide into this position. They just slide their finger down, they've got it covered. It's all there. There's nothing to hit. There's nothing to coordinate. It's just now all of my B's have become B flats. Make sense? That's just my philosophy. You can walk out and say he's full of it and continue doing what you're doing, but I want you to wrestle with it and email me and we'll talk about it. Getting into this particular etude, number 26, you'll see that I've got bis for your second beat, first measure. Definitely chromatic F sharp in that second beat. Actually, second to third beat. Then you see all the bis's marked. The two spots that are really problematic in this etude are the last two measures of your first line. I definitely recommend your bis for those B flats that are standing alone up at the top. When you come to the C flat, that's a B natural. When you come down to the A flat, you must use side B flat. I just told you that's one of the hardest combinations, right? Why the heck are you subscribing that we do that? Because notice it's followed by a C flat, which is what? B natural. Okay? I do not subscribe rolling with this key. Why? It's not what we call a positive action. Now, do we do it sometimes? Can I do it cleanly? Yes. But it's not something that I subscribe to or try to teach. Does that make sense? Then you'll see the rest of the time that we're using side B flats through that passage. Okay, something that you have to practice a lot. Definitely recommend changing your rhythms around. Okay, over and over again. I usually with my students have them do it 3 times in a row. They must do it 3 times in a row without mistake. If they get to the third repetition, make a mistake, we go back, have to do it from 0 again. Has to be 3 times in a row. Practicing consistency. Okay. Also, I want to tell you about a technique that I called regrouping. I did not put this in the pamphlet. A lot of students are bound by their eyes and they see rhythmic groupings. And I want to tell you that they are just that. They're nothing but a man-made way for us to group rhythms to make it mathematically work within a measure. Get away from that. Regrouping is simply grouping stuff together that's much more towards the phrase. In this passage, it's just combining those, heading up to that top note, not worrying about where they actually fall rhythmically. Does that make sense? This is something I came up with. I didn't come up with the technique so much, but I came up with what I call regrouping. It's just regrouping the rhythmic passages. Okay, your next figure. This is kind of the etude where if you survive the first two lines, you're kind of on the home stretch. Last two measures of the second line. This one, regrouping, definitely helps the way the phrase works. Really trying to phrase it the low D. Think of it as is the first part, and then think as the second part. And then you can practice it in two parts, and then rhythmically merge them together. As well as changing your rhythm around. Okay, those techniques over and over and over again are your hope for this passage. Also, what's the marking on them? Staccato. I find, excuse me, again, we've already talked about staccato does not mean short, it just means separate. Realize that they're very disjunct to begin with, right? I would really have your students not worry so much about playing short and just play these long, legato. Why? Make sure to get the air through the horn. There's enough disjunctness to the line to where I think the perception is that it's short enough. Okay? And that would be some of the problems where students really try to get, what happens is the air doesn't get through the horn, and the next thing it sounds like popcorn. Okay? Just think about trying to get the line to go through. Most of the other fingerings through here follow exactly the lines that I have, the rules that I have spoken about. Trying to see if there's anything that's... No, it's pretty much straight in. All right, let's see what happens.